have a panel of funders up here, very generous folks who represent very generous organizations and institutions, and we're very pleased to have them here with us today. And as they take the stage, I'm going to very slowly begin to introduce the panel. A number of our state and nation's leading foundations are represented here with us today, and I thank all of them, as I know all of you thank all of them for joining us. The individuals on this panel and others in the audience spend thousands of hours traveling throughout the state, around the country, and across the world, studying societal issues, seeking ways to work with communities to address challenges and make transformational advancements. These representatives have made numerous trips to the Rio Grande Valley over the years, and they've generously supported a number of initiatives in this region. I think when so many people don't take the time to understand this region, we should thank these folks for having taken the time over the years to understand this part of the state. Right. In view of what we've heard today, it is particularly important to hear from them now, to glean what they've learned from the panels that have preceded them up here on the stage, and to hear what they need from all of us as they pursue additional opportunities for engagement here. Let me introduce on this program today Pablo Farias, Vice President of the Economic Opportunity and Assets Program at the Ford Foundation. Hillary Pennington, Director of Education, Post-Secondary Success and Special Initiatives for the United States at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Jamie Marasotis, President and CEO of the Lumina Foundation. Wynn Rosser, Executive Director of the Greater Texas Foundation. And Micah Sajabil, Program Officer for U.S. Education at the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation. A hand for these folks, please. Now, we have kind of an open-ended question for all of you. Let me frame it this way. We'll start with Mr. Farias and move down the panel. Let me ask it to you this way. So many of your foundations have been involved, as we said, in this area. We understand that foundations are very strategic about where they choose to involve themselves and about what their role is. Their role is simply not to provide funding, but to help communities create a strong and leading infrastructure that will provide permanent and transformational opportunities. You are in the business not of giving a man a fish, but of teaching him to fish, as the old saying goes. Would you please share your assessments with us of this region, what you've seen, the work that you've done, and the work that you think needs to be done, beginning with Mr. Farias?
Thank you very much. And today has been a wonderful example of what makes a region so unique and valuable in the experience and thinking of a national institution like the foundation that I represent in this panel today. And I want to thank you for what has been an incredible set of presentations, very moving experiences that have been shared today, and also a source of inspiration and excitement as we think about the challenges that we seek to contribute to addressing nationally and internationally in our work. And what has been most inspiring today is to see the partnership that is represented in this room, the coming together of all these different sectors of the communities of the Lower Rio Grande Valley. And I want to particularly thank Juliet Garcia and Robert Nelson, as well as Francisco Cigarroa, for the opportunity they provided us when they invited us to meet and think together. And it was at the beginning of this year in New York that we first met as a group of foundations and began to think together about how we could better learn and connect with the rich experiences and commitment represented by their institutions here in the Lower Rio Grande Valley. And coming today and seeing you all here in this room, hearing the presentations this morning, confirms the vision, the leadership, the importance of the opportunity represented by the Lower Rio Grande Valley. And I want to say that looking at that not only from the perspective of today, but remembering a few months back with a number of our partners who are here today with the Proyecto Azteca, visiting the Cameron Park and some of the other colonias, hearing the incredible transformation that families enable, and we have heard a lot about that this morning here also. Made us very aware of the opportunity that the commitment and energy that all of the people in this region bring to their lives represents for the work of philanthropy. And also the importance in that sense to build from the leadership of the core institutions in a region, and the University of Texas system, Chancellor Cigarroa's commitment to making the university be part of the transformation of this region, the leadership of Dr. Garcia and Dr. Nelson with the universities in Brownsville and Edinburgh, make this a vision that is critical for us in thinking about what it takes to make a place respond to the promise of the people in it. And it is this combination of people and place, this commitment to education, to health, but also this commitment to economic opportunity that generates the promise that we seek to contribute to as a philanthropic institution. And it is also recognizing the capacity of groups here, some of whom we have partnered with for many, many years. I'm thinking about the Community Resources Group. John Squires is here today. The work that they have helped the colonias and other groups in their efforts to improve their housing stock, to create the conditions that enable these communities to participate fully in the regional dynamic of the Lower Rio Grande Valley. It's this combination of efforts on the economic opportunity side and on the personal opportunity, the skill building, the educational access that is so inspiring here today. And hearing of this in the context of the national vision of what makes metropolitan regions thrive, what makes metropolitan regions an engine of competitiveness and potential base for participating in a growingly globalized economy is something that also helps us move forward in our work. So I would just say that as a national foundation with a mandate to foster this expansion of opportunity with a vision of social justice that seeks to expand access and participation and build the voice of the communities that are often left aside, that coming to this region is incredibly inspiring, is a source of learning, and is certainly a source of commitment for us working with a number of our partners in thinking about how our programs can contribute to the effort that we have seen here today.
Mr. Farias, thank you very much. That's great. Appreciate it. Ms. Pennington, your perspective on this, please.
Well, let me start with why we're here, and talk a little bit about what we're doing together with you, and then close with what I think some of our shared challenges and opportunities are. So the why we're here, you are a remarkable region. You are key partners in 3, I think, of the most important initiatives the Foundation is doing. So the work to create early college high schools, and the work at Hidalgo, and now beginning here in Brownsville. An initiative we have with community colleges, Completion by Design, that South Texas College is a major partner with. And then the Partnerships for Post-Secondary Success, which is working with United Brownville and many of the institutions here, including the university and TSC. And across all of those things, you share our commitment to 2 key things, and we chose to work with you because of them. You have partnership, but it's partnership with a purpose. And that purpose is that I think you understand better than most places around the country that we have to create systems for our young people and our communities that by design take them from high school into college and to college success. And so your willingness to partner with that purpose, to share that purpose, is one reason we have invested here. And the second is this issue of by design. Whether it's an early college, high school, or it's the work you're beginning to do, that you have done historically in the way that you've structured relationships here in Brownsville. It is to say that we have to create institutions and institutional designs and structures that make it likely that when students come to a place to get an education, they will in fact complete that education. And you all are extraordinary in the work and innovation that you're doing there. I will give you just a little story. Choosing the partners for post-secondary success was a competitive process. We got proposals from around the country, and the Brownsville proposal, I can tell you this now, was the best proposal that we got. It was a great proposal partly because of the content of it. You were going to work to link together the school district and the university to align curriculum, to begin to look at data of where you're losing students and what you as a community can do to try to change that. But before you even, when you sent in the proposal, before we had even chosen you as a community, you had already raised the matching money, unlike any other community in the country. And you had raised it including a $40 contribution from a janitor in one of your organizations. So it's that kind, you sit in a place like Seattle where most communities don't start to try to raise the money for a match until they're sure they get the grant. And it's that kind of spirit that led us to choose to work here. What I would just say in closing, and I hope we get a chance for some conversation and dialogue, 3 things that I hope you stay as focused on in the future as you have been is, first, this extraordinary opportunity that you have to innovate that is created by everything that you've been hearing about today. But I hope you will take that to think in non-traditional ways, to not be afraid of partnering across and between institutions, to use technology so that you can get the benefits across a region that includes a lot of distance. So hopefully to continue to do that and to continue to be as brave as you are being about using data. I think running through a lot of the conversations this morning was the ways in which data for communities like this have been used to punish or hold people down or for compliance. And so we feel it is particularly exciting and particularly brave to see you beginning to use data so that you can diagnose where you're losing people and where you can best take limited resources to intervene. So I hope you keep that commitment to data. And then the commitment to really continuing to partner across your institutions so that you create a seamless pathway for students, whether they are starting in high school and moving into college, or whether they are starting in a community college and moving them from that community college into the university system and degrees, but to continue to innovate in those areas. So really a privilege to be here, really a privilege to partner with you, and you inspire us at the Gates Foundation every day. I'll say there's a famous clip inside the foundation of when Bill and Melinda were here visiting at Hidalgo a couple years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years from now ago, where Bill Gates cried, where one of the teachers in that system moved him to tears as they talked about the work that you all are doing. So we don't often see our boss cry, and that has inspired and energized a lot of us at the Gates Foundation. So thank you.
Great. Just great. Thank you. Mr. Maristotis.
I always hate going after Hillary. It's very difficult. So I have had a wonderful time here. I have to tell you, I spend a lot of time on the road, and almost all my time on the road, I give speeches. I'm not going to give a speech. I was here to learn some things, so I want to tell you what I learned today by sitting here over the last couple of days. I was actually sitting, just before we came up, thinking about this famous YouTube video that's out there right now about the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's very interesting. The backstory on this video is that there was a story in Newsweek magazine in May that described Grand Rapids as a dying city. And the people of the community were so moved and outraged by this that this group of people got together and they made this video. And it's a 7-minute video that Roger Ebert called the greatest music video ever made, and which I would describe as a city's love letter to itself. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing to see how they got 5,000 people to participate in the production of this video. And I was sitting here at this Vista Summit saying, and I said this to President Garcia earlier, this Vista Summit is sort of a love letter to yourselves as a community at the Rio Grande Valley. What I've seen in this meeting is a tremendous partnership of people, community leaders, business leaders, education leaders, coming together for a very important purpose, which is helping to propel the momentum forward on increasing high-quality higher education attainment as the key driver of economic and social and cultural prosperity for the Rio Grande Valley. And I think that's very moving, I think it's very impressive, and I think there's a great future ahead for all of you. What I've learned is really broken down into three simple things that I think matter as a result of this conversation that I've reflected on and that we'll be thinking about as we consider our future investments in the Valley and indeed across the state of Texas and nationally. The first one is, and it's in a way reflected in what I was just saying, community really matters. Community matters a great deal in terms of this work. I think we saw that from what Nancy Cantor was reflecting on in terms of what we've seen in the city of Syracuse, and of course we've seen that in terms of this community, that this sense that place matters, that this is not some generic set of problems that require a generic set of strategies, that this is a community and that community deserves and should demand specific responses and strategies. And local leaders, national organizations like all of us, we play a part in helping to make sure that community matters in this community. The second is that, I think investment matters. I work at a foundation, I get that. Money matters. We are in a position where we can use resources to leverage change, and that change has to be focused on ensuring that there's a strong outcomes orientation and that we are focused ultimately on the things that matter. In this case, I think it's transforming the Valley, particularly for the people who've been left behind, the large Latino population in this community for whom the rest of the world is slowly passing them by, and we can't afford that individually or collectively. The third thing is that commitment matters. And one of the things that I was thinking about, actually, when Randy Whittington was speaking about his point about the partnership between communities, I think that's really important, seeing yourself as a unified community and creating that commitment to a common good rather than this competition among communities is really important. But partnership also matters between the business community, employer community, and the higher education community. I have an op-ed in today's Christian Science Monitor with my friend Charlie Cobb, who runs the national business organization called the Committee for Economic Development, where we make a pretty simple point, which is business leaders have to get in the game of transforming higher education in this country. The role of higher education in terms of our economic success is too important for business leaders to be on the sideline or to be critics rather than active partners that are actually participating in that transformation. So ultimately, what I think I've learned, I learned from one of the mothers that was speaking, who summed it up best in two of the things that she said. It was Gloria Guajardo. She's still here. She said two things that she spoke so effortlessly, you almost missed them. The first one was that we need to educate everybody. And I take that at face value, literally. We need to educate everybody. That this idea that somehow as a society it's okay to leave some people behind is simply unacceptable. And that concept, which might sound like an idealistic notion, is in fact an economic necessity. Educating everyone is not just the nice thing to do, it's the necessary thing to do. And the other thing that she said, I think it was a piece of advice that she had gotten from somebody, was you can't take away a good education. And that's right. The one thing that you can have lots of things taken from you, but you can't have that good education taken away from you. In my family, I'm a first-generation college graduate, first to go to college or graduate from college in my family. And in my family, me going to college eradicated poverty in my family forever. That's what it has to do for all of the families in the Valley. That's what it has to do for everyone who's here today, is it has to have that kind of transformative impact. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I've got lots of specific suggestions, trust me, but I just wanted to tell you what I've learned as a result of being here, and I really appreciate that opportunity.
Mr. Marasotis, thank you. Depending upon how long Mr. Rosser and Mr. Sajabil talk, we may ask you for a specific suggestion or two. We'll see. So, Mr. Rosser, good to see you again.
Thanks, Evan. I'll take that challenge. First, I want to, on behalf of Texas Philanthropy, thank my colleagues to my left. They could be a lot of places today, and it's very significant that they're here, so I appreciate that. I appreciate Micah being here, too. Thanks, man. You know, I took the Chancellor's challenge, and I have been listening, and like Jamie, I've got pages of notes, and so I'm trying to think, you know, what are the kind of most meaningful things I could say. The three things that strike me in response to Evan's questions, you know, why are we interested in this part of the country? We're a statewide organization. Texas is a big place. Why the Rio Grande Valley? Well, we're looking at the same data, the same demographic information as everyone else. Fortunately, there are a lot of people looking at that and drawing the same conclusions. And there's a tremendous opportunity for impact here, both impact in terms of equity, which is very important, but as Jamie just mentioned, impact in terms of economy. And this is something, you know, the question really is why not the Rio Grande Valley as opposed to why. And then the third reason we're very encouraged about the Rio Grande Valley is leadership. Now, Chancellor, I know that you know that Dr. Nelson and Dr. Garcia are stellar leaders. Although we're a statewide grant maker, you know, I interact nationally, and they could be anywhere. They could be leading any universities in the country. Dr. Shirley Reed is here, a rock star community college president. She could be anywhere in the country. Dr. Danny King, third row back, who shared his personal story. You want to talk about an innovative public school leader? You got one right here, probably the most innovative leader I know. So leadership matters, community matters. I'm not even telling my story, and I'm getting choked up telling other people's stories. Community matters, leadership matters. We know that. So why are we investing here? Because there are a lot of good reasons to do so. The thing I'm going to concentrate on really is, Bruce, I really liked your model. Innovate, export, and waste less. You said green economy, but I picked up on what you said where you said waste less. The Rio Grande Valley is innovative. We need to take that innovation and export it within the valley and export it out of the valley. There are 12 early college high schools in this region. You know, something really innovative like getting high school freshmen to take college courses. High school freshmen that may otherwise have dropped out of high school. That's innovative. You got Danny King, who took a district within 2 years that was twice the state dropout rate and cut it in half to state dropout rate. That's innovative. And he did that with Shirley Reed by starting the College Career and Technology Academy. That's one partnership. There are a lot of partnerships in the Valley. We need, instead of one-to-one partnerships, we need many-to-many partnerships. But you can do that if you start thinking about beyond geographic borders and think about the Valley as the border, not municipalities or counties. So we need to export within the Valley and outside of the Valley. And you need to waste less. Like to Jamie's point, we can't afford to waste a single human life. We're competing against countries now that have figured that out, and they're taking advantage of every bright young person that they can. You know, I've recently met, last 3 or 4 years, a young man in El Paso who's a theoretical chemist at the age of 19. He probably would be picking chilies now if it weren't for some of the educational innovations like early college high schools. And he's going to go to Berkeley and get a PhD and solve the world's problems. Or he may stay in El Paso and be the best organic chemistry teacher that the region's ever seen. But we can't afford to waste. Not the kind of talent that we have. We know it's there. You know, these 6th grade international chess champions. We've got to take advantage of the talent we have. So I think we need to build on the strengths that were here. Someone said that earlier. There are partnerships. We need them to be broader. There is innovation. We need to take advantage of what we're learning here and do that across the valley and across the state. And ultimately, we think that the opportunities to innovate lead to those opportunities for impact, both in equity and economics. And ultimately, we're looking at leadership here, not just the leadership we have now, but the leadership we're going to need for the future of our state.
Great. Mr. Sajabil, your turn.
Sure, thanks. I want to echo just what a thrill it is to be here today, and I think you get a sense on the panel just how personally we take this and how invested we are, not only in the Valley. And I think speaking for myself, I started my career in the Valley 10 years ago as a public school teacher in La Jolla ISD, so just a fantastic, was here for 2 years, fantastic experience in terms of really getting to know the community, getting to know the kids that are in the classroom. And then a few years later, coincidentally, wound up marrying a local Brownsville girl who grew up on Calle Jacaranda. So feel like the Valley, to me, I know the unique aspects of the Valley. I know the passion of the folks in this room. I know the potential of the kids that are out from Starr County down here through Brownsville. And I know that all of us at the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation feel the same passion and know the potential that lies here and is already being shown here in the Valley. I think, and Dr. Garcia wanted to mention, the times I've been in the Grand Salon before have been for weddings and celebrations and dancing kind of where you are right now. And this to me, for the record, I did not get married here, but this to me is better than any wedding celebration and a more exciting experience with potential for the Valley. So yesterday when I came, I think the framing of the day was spot on that the Chancellor started off with yesterday, just really focusing on transformational regional change. And that really aligns with the Dell Families Foundation's view of transformational change for children living in urban poverty. So really looking at systemic change, transformational change, impactful change for kids. The emphasis on problem solving, on continuous improvement, on recognizing that these are tough issues in the ed sector, in the health sector, and the economic development sector, but knowing that we have a good collaborative effort building with multiple partners throughout the room and with those of us here on the stage, I think is fantastic. Dr. Garcia, just your recognition of the points of excellence in the Valley, I think was a point well taken. There are excellent points of light, to borrow a term from George H.W. Bush, I guess. But there are excellent points of light across the Valley that really show what can be done. And the question is, how do we scale and how do we replicate in a way that makes sense and that we can achieve? And finally, I think what I really took away, and I've heard this from other folks, but really what was powerful about this morning for me was the connection with humanity. And a lot of times from positions at a foundation, you can get removed from really the common human experience. So I think the panels with the mothers was particularly powerful, just to really get us rerouted in what matters, that these are kids' lives, that this is the Valley's future, and really just a powerful presentation from the UT system and partners put together. So a little background on the Dell Family Foundation. We've been investing here since the foundation opened in 1999, really focusing on K-12 education, so fewer investments on the higher ed side, but focused very, very deeply in K-12 and on childhood obesity and wellness efforts in the area. And so as a funder, we really seek opportunities with the greatest potential to directly and measurably change the lives of kids in regions like the Valley. And what we know internally is what you've heard a lot of, but just want to reflect on them. The Valley's young, it's dynamic, it's primed for big impact, it's a demographic trendsetter. There's passion in this community, and there's also a big need. So we recognize that and just want to reinforce that we're here as partners. Want to talk about challenges, both as an investor and as a big advocate for the Valley, but challenges that I've had with conversations with other program officers from foundations and other folks across the country when they look at the Valley. One thing is just seeing the incredible potential, but I think that what we're talking about here today is really starting to identify who owns the broader vision for reform in the Valley. I think that's a very worthwhile conversation and excited that it's taking place. Second, just really the challenge of identifying organizations that have the scale and capacity to impact a region that's geographically dispersed, and I think the idea of using university as anchors sounds like a smart one, and we'll be encouraged to see how that develops. Because when you look at some of the trade-offs we make as investors in other urban areas, especially on the U.S. education side, a lot of times in urban areas you have a large school district which can provide an anchor. Whether it's high-functioning or not, at least it provides a center to where you can put investments. In a place like the Valley that's more kind of cutting across multiple counties, multiple cities, I think you're really looking, it's very helpful to have partners aligned in that clear vision. Finally, just point of challenge that I've heard, and not unique to the Valley, but just something that's common across philanthropy, grant making in general, is just the idea that we really want to start to stop layering on grant programs to really make strategic investments that are core to strategy, that aren't wasteful in terms of dollar resources or just a waste of folks' time. So how can we really identify with the core group of partners in the Valley projects that that matter, that are core to organization strategy, and that have clear outcomes on the back end. So in closing, just a couple thoughts. So I know that there's no better network on the individual side than the Valley network. Just knowing my wife and the network of Brownsville people that you meet, no matter what city around the world you're in, there's always someone from Brownsville around. But I think that what you really learn from that is that there's a common bond and a common experience here on the individual level that's very impactful. But I think that what's been referenced here today is that at the organizational level, there's still tension across the Valley where that exchange isn't as powerful. So really putting the charge out there is how can we make organizations interact as well as Valleyites interact. Second, just want to float the idea of thinking about scale in a different way. So a lot of times we think about scale in terms of program replication and really kind of modeling a program and scaling it tightly or otherwise. But I think another way to look at scale is scaling ideas or principles. So I'd put out the challenge, what are the key principles that matter in the Valley, and how can you float ideas across the Valley that really matter from community from across the region? And finally, just point of advice, and I think this is an obvious point, but we know unfortunately that we can't boil the ocean. So just really looking at who will the key players be at the table that really can look at transformational impact. How can we identify really the key needs that can really flip this region and put it on a strong trajectory for growth and progress? So really looking at a deep inventory of the resources that are already here, identifying the gaps, creating clear outcomes that we can all collectively as funders map around and resource to. So that's my insight from today. Again, just very pleased to be here. Know that at the Dell Family Foundation, we're here behind you guys and look forward to watching how this initiative unfolds and are excited to be a part of it.
Mr. Sajabil, thank you very much. We have about 10 minutes. I want to invite any of the people up on stage before I'm going to call this audible before I call another audible, Chancellor. If anybody on stage wants to react to anything that you've heard from the other people up here with you.
I just want to say that there's a great complementarity in what we have heard here, which is part of what makes it so exciting to be here. What draws us to this region is precisely this opportunity to enrich the work across a number of institutions with the partnerships that are represented here in the room, but also hearing what has been presented here. I think we can all see the tremendous synergy and opportunity that there is.
You all are in sync.
On this educational engagement, on this strengthening the access and success in higher education, and looking at the economic opportunity side of a region that has a tremendous opportunity to expand its dynamic engagement in the global economy.
Terrific.
Two of the things that I heard that I just want to emphasize from my colleagues. One was from Hillary, the importance of the use of data to help drive the decisions, which I think is really, really important. I think you've got to be really clear on what your goals are, and you've got to make sure that you use the information that you have to make sure that you increase. The ultimate goals obviously are increasing educational attainment as the key indicator that's going to drive the economic and social development of the Valley. But there's a level of detail, granularity to that that's really important and really hard. And I think that relates to the other point that I heard from Wynn, which was the locus of leadership here is really important. UT Brownsville, UT Pan American, they cannot do this by themselves. They are the critical drivers. I mean, they represent a lot of what needs to be done. But this issue of figuring out where the long-term locus of leadership is going to be really, really important. It's fantastic to see such broad support from the system, which I think is, in my view, sort of unprecedented as I think about systems nationally. But I think it's going to be a long-term challenge, to be candid, to figure out where the leadership is, not over the next year or two, but over the next decade or two. And that leadership model, I think, is going to be really important to come together and figure out and stick to as education leaders, as community leaders, as business leaders, because that's what's going to drive a lot of this forward.
Ms. Pennington, Mr. Rosser?
I would say, I think as an outsider, I am not leaving today that clear about what you actually plan to go do. I'm feeling very energized by the potential, by the desire. So I would just encourage you, don't lose any time or momentum from today. Talk to each other as fast as you can, get as concrete as fast as you possibly can about what it actually means to turn the potential of this regional frame into things that are concrete, that can help you keep going for the long haul, it can help partners like us help you as well.
Mr. Rosser? No? Okay. Well, here's the second audible I'm going to call. If anybody in the audience wants to offer a comment that we can either react to or bounce off of our panelists, we've got about 5 to 6 minutes left, and I'm certainly happy for us to use that time to involve the audience's participation.
That's got to be historic to have a bunch of foundation
Never.
people talk
That's
short
right.
enough that there's
Ever.
time
These
for
are
questions.
these people control enormous amounts of money. Surely, you have something you want to say.
It's a lesson to me. See, I didn't give a speech, so for once there's time left.
You did a great job.
That's what happens. Nobody brave enough to
I
jump
should
in.
learn something.
Well, Karen will maybe Chancellor, of course, the Chancellor.
Well, just a question to this very distinguished group who have had the opportunity to travel throughout the United States and the world.
Chancellor, there's a microphone there.
But, when you come down here to the Lower Rio Grande Valley, and when you see community colleges that are relatively young, you see the University of Texas Pan American, which in general is a young university. You see an opportunity where University of Texas at Brownsville is now evolving into a freestanding four-year university that at the same time has to work seamlessly with a community college that's also going to expand in its own way. And then you have an opportunity to see a regional academic health center that has a vision of becoming a medical school. So I see, the opportunity before us is that there are few ecosystems like this that have an opportunity to start relatively very early on. So as a foundation or as a group of foundations, what do you see as the opportunities of a region that, is relatively young in its educational system where you can really think out of the box and really make some astounding new ways of reaching out, teaching students, and have our faculty become the community. Do you see that as a huge potential that exists upon us, and do you see a sense of urgency to get that done?
Anybody jump in?
Well, let me comment, since the image keeps popping up in my mind of this reference to India. And I was in Bangalore about 4 weeks ago and had a meeting at the India Institute of Management, which is one of the very prestigious institutions that has created this new generation of leadership in India, together with the Indian Institutes of Technology, both of which emerged in India in the last 40 years and have been the basis of a new generation of leadership and participation that has created the base for this global economic engagement and success that we see in India. And we benefit greatly from the opportunities that have been generated through those institutions. And looking back yet at that reference, what strikes me is the incredible capacity in the Lower Rio Grande Valley to create an inclusive process of opportunity. What we have heard here today, this is repeated stories of family transformation through access to education, the tremendous energy and commitment that have been manifested in the stories that were shared here this morning, represent not only that incredible energy, that magic valley of this incredible commitment of the communities of this region, but also the capacity of the institutions here, of the University of Texas institutions that have become key drivers of that process of inclusion and openness. And that is incredibly inspiring, because in contrast to what happens in other places, and let me just talk for a moment about Beijing, where we have also engaged in this process of opening the educational system, yet there we see this continued problem with the rights of migrants, and these are not foreign migrants, these are migrants from the rural areas of China into the cities, who 2 or 3 generations of living in the city do not yet allow them to have access to either education or health care, who continue to not have a pathway into the higher education opportunities that would make them full citizens in their own country. And I think that what we have heard here today is this history, this story of inclusion, and this incredible opportunity to create a community that is inclusive, that embraces this trajectory of economic and social participation, that creates this strength of families and this strength of participation that provides the magic of this place that is inspiring.
Anybody else want to jump in?
Just quickly, my view is, Bruce made the point, and I think it was very important, that regions, metropolitan areas need to find their niche. And at the risk of stating the obvious, the niche here is embrace the border. The border represents an enormous opportunity, in my opinion, not the symbolism of that wall, but the opportunity that exists. I mean, the wall is real and it's metaphorical, right? The wall represents challenges for a lot of people, but the opportunities that exist here, I think, are enormous in seeing this as a cohesive region and seeing that region as having enormous opportunity that's going to help people in a much more expansive way than would have been thought possible. Nobody else has that capacity in the country except for the Rio Grande Valley. And I think there are huge opportunities here in terms of economic development by seeing the border as something that's embraced, that's seen as an opportunity to really change quality of life for people and create a whole new set of opportunities that weren't envisioned before.
Just to build on that, for me, the metaphor, which goes with the border, is how do you help people get over it? So the bridges that are here. So I would say, as you think about particularly the educational challenges, 3 things. Design your systems backwards from the highest end you want your students to reach. So if you want your students to be PhD economists, PhD practical engineers that are figuring out how to solve practical problems in regions that have a lot of sun and a little water, design your systems backwards from that so that it makes it likely for them to be able to get that full distance. And that's why things like early college high schools for the STEM disciplines matter so much. If you as a high school student can leave high school with a couple of years of college credit or a credential underneath your belt, it makes the journey all the way through to become a doctor, to become a PhD, that much more affordable and that much more achievable. So designing backwards from that and creating new structures like early college high schools to make that easier. The second is to do everything you can to accelerate people's momentum forward. So again, don't take, who said high school has to be 12 years long? Who says an academic semester needs to be 16 weeks long? Who says if you flunk your placement test when you go to a community college, you have to be put into a semester-long remediation program? Think about the ways in which you can use data to diagnose what people need and then move them further and faster and innovate there. And the last would be use technology. You cannot, in a region with these kinds of distances, do everything or be everything. So the degree to which you can get the best teaching that's available in one institution accessible to another institution, and use all of the kinds of technology that can help you pinpoint what help students need and get it to them. I think those 3 things would be good design principles.
Chancellor, Bruce already made, I think, a very compelling reason to think about the Valley as an economic region. But from an educational standpoint, something like 80% of the students from South Texas stay in this region that attend higher education, 80% stay in the region. But when you flip it, I know, I think UTB, for example, 96% of your students are from this region. We were visiting a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Nelson and some of his key team. 4 districts make up 80% of his incoming freshman class. And so that suggests a whole set of regional activities with these 2 institutions and the community colleges as hubs to really engage in a very purposeful, we've heard focused and disciplined a couple of times, K through 12 engagement strategy. And when you start thinking about, as Hillary just pointed out, right now we have an educational system with a high school diploma. We have it designed with a high school diploma as a terminal degree. And we need to design an educational system with a college credential as the terminal degree. We know college degrees are what most of our students need, some type of college, a certificate, an associate's degree, a BA, a BS, or more. So we need to think about that design challenge very intentionally. But knowing that most of the students in this region attend college in this region suggests a whole set of activities that we really haven't started to see nationally yet. And the Partners for Post-Secondary Success grant that's here in Brownsville is, I think, a really solid start at looking at what do you do in a place where you look cross-sector. We say over and over and over again that the problems that we face are too big for any one entity to take on or any one sector to take on, yet we continue to focus on things as individual institutions and kind of as one sector. We reinforce that over and over and over again. So I think the Partners for Post-Secondary Success work, knowing that the region needs to serve the region, those are some foundational design principles, along with what Hillary said, that can be game changers.
Mr. Sagamil, we have 1 minute.
Sure.
So brilliance in 1 minute.
Yeah, no pressure.
You can do it.
So I think there are great organizations that have been referenced here today that I think can already start to share lessons across the valley. PSJA has been referenced a few times, but Dr. King, really on the K-12 side, your credit recovery, early college models, and the rest are really something that all district folks across the region should be feet on the street if they haven't already to look at it. Also, on the Idea Public School side, Idea Public Schools, if you don't know, in their next vision for the future, they will be the largest producer of college graduates for the state of Texas in the next few years, out of any other organization, school district in the state of Texas. So just be aware of the innovation that's already in your backyard, that's growing in your backyard, and take those lessons and share them across districts.
Well, you have 21 seconds left. You yield back the balance of your time. Is that how that goes? What an amazing panel. What a great group of folks. Please join me in thanking Mr. Farias, Ms. Pennington, Mr. Marasosis, Mr. Rosser, Mr. Sagamil. And here is where I get off. I want to thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this program. It's been my honor and my privilege. I have to be back in Austin tonight for an event, so I'm going to have to leave the summit a bit early, but rest assured you're going to be in the Chancellor's even better hands. Many thanks again for your being here. I've certainly enjoyed listening to everything you've had to say. We'll take a 15-minute break and then welcome our panel of university leaders back to the stage. Thanks very much.
But before break, let's just give